Meditations on a Moth. This poem has an epigraph from Vincent van Gogh, who had very extreme relationships to color and wrote in his journals, "How splendid yellow is." My poor eye, it has done so much looking at the sky, at the dark fretted trumpets in the frescoes of the Chrysler Building, at the opium dens of high and low, where bodies sway like white flowers, amount due, amount due. Is the blue you think of when I tell you? Do ghosts have neuroses? What is the point of the haunting they do? Here, look. No, look. I am trying to rid myself of myself, to see past the tumbling clouds. All evening, drums rumble in the corner park. The mobsters convene when the cops leave. What goes down stays down. The street at 3 a.m., a fantastic absence of color. Outside the studio window, a river slides along its dulcimer bed, aquifers and accordions and Alcatraz. But you have to get up in the morning. The brute blind glare of snow in sun. Look again, and up you may rise to something quite surprising in the distance. Descent. This poem was inspired by reading some poems by the poet Guillaume Apollinaire, who is a wonderful writer and also a fabulous liar, and routinely lied about his origins, and usually making them much grander than they were. So I decided to write a lying poem about origins of a sort of slightly different type. It's also a poem that's lying but trying to tell the truth in some way. Descent. I was born a bastard in an amphetamine spree, lit through with a mother's quickenings, burrowing into her, afraid she would not have me, and she would not have me. I dropped out down below the knees of a rick-rack halter dress, sheeted, tented knees, water breaking, linoleum peeling, and no one there to see but me. I woke on the floor as if meant to put her back together, to try to hold on to her like a crate to a river, as if I'd been shipped down to stand straight, while in the misgiving she said, I had a dream of 36 sticks floating down a river and a dog who couldn't swim, and I could not swim. I slipped from her grip in a room where 2 orange cats stared like tidy strangers at a world of larger strangeness. And I had no name. I was there at her breast, and I thought I could see her, the swag of her hair, the jaw, the fearing. But I barely saw. I went sliding down the river from a house in which it was sweet to sleep, and the cool of the sheets was never cool enough, and the imprint of the bedded bodies, diving at once, took the shape of 2 geese. The next poem I'm going to read was inspired by one of those self-punishing exercises you give yourself as a writer sometimes, which in this case was to try to rewrite the Iliad as a sonnet. Needless to say, I failed. It was 16 lines, but it's trying to imagine it from Helen's, a sort of modern Helen's point of view. Troy. We had a drink and got in bed. That's when the boat in my mouth set sail, my fingers drifting in the shallows of your buzz cut, and in the sound of your eye, a skiff coasted. Boarding it, I found all the bric-a-brac of your attic gloom, the knives from that other island trip, the poison suckle root lifted from God knows where. Oh, all your ill-begotten loot, and yes, somewhere, the words you never actually spoke, the woven rope tethering me to this rotting joint. Touch me, and the boat and the city burn like whiskey going down the throat. Or so it goes, our love-wheedling myth, excessively baroque. And the last poem I'll read from this book is called Inventing a Horse. And I grew up in New York City, and like not a few other little girls was infatuated with horses. But my main resentment about living in New York was that it was impossible to have a horse. So many years later, haunted by this childhood drama, I wrote Inventing a Horse. Inventing a horse is not easy. One must not only think of the horse, one must dig fence posts around him. One must include a place where horses like to live, or do when they live with humans like you. Slowly you must walk him in the cold, feed him bran mash, apples, accustom him to the harness, holding in mind even when you are tired harnesses and tack cloths and saddle oil to keep the saddle clean as a face in the sun. One must imagine teaching him to run among the knuckles of tree roots, not to be skittish at first sight of timber wolves, and not to grow thin in the city, where at some point you will have to live. And one must imagine the absence of money. Most of all, though, the living weight, the sound of his feet on the needles, and since he is heavy and real, and sometimes tired after a run down the river with a light whip at his side, one must imagine love in the mind that does not know love, an animal mind, a love that does not depend on your image of it, your understanding of it, indifferent to all that it lacks. A muzzle and two black eyes looking the day away, a field empty of everything but witchgrass, fluent trees, and some piles of hay. I'm not checking my email and looking at the time to make sure I'm not going over. Sadly, I don't, all my watches broke at one moment, and because I have a phone, I don't replace them. These are poems from the new book, which is called Once. Once. A girl ate ices in the red summer. Bees buzzed among the hydrangea, heavy as plums. Summer widened its lens. You would not believe how happy she was. Her mother pulled her through the pool till her hair went soft. Below, cracks spread in the vinyl where her mother's long legs scissored. Above, wet faces in the sun smiled. The home was square with wine and apple pie. At dusk, lamps were lit. V's of geese swept past. Fresh sheets shivered on the laundry line. And as the nights grew crisp, our souls unfolded. Then winter arrived. The parents bent over the daughter tucked in her bed. Creaking from the cold, the old black walnut's roots spread beneath the snow. When spring came, the home had tilted into the tree's long, cool shadow. Nothing was the same again.